I would say Roman Reigns, who's a cousin of mine. I think he looks great, very talented in the ring.
We are talking about deep wrestling roots here, ranging from the Samoan Dynasty to the brotherhood of Terry and Dory Funk Jr. Then you have Charlotte Flair carrying the torch for her father, the 16-time champ Ric Flair. Today we are diving into 20 WWE icons and their shocking family ties. Let's kick this off with perhaps the most prestigious bloodline to ever grace the business, Bret and Owen Hart. This is the story of the Hart family, the Royals of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Bret, the Hitman Hart, and his younger brother Owen shared a bond that went far deeper than just genetics. These two weren't just brothers, they were arguably two of the most gifted athletes to ever lace up a pair of wrestling boots. Their saga is a roller coaster of massive championship victories and absolutely heartbreaking tragedy. Growing up as two of 12 kids, they were raised by the legendary Stu Hart, the mastermind behind Stampede Wrestling. Stu was famous for training future stars in his notorious basement gym, a place feared and respected as the Dungeon. From their very first breath, Bret and Owen seemed destined to take over the wrestling world. Their father's training was brutal, involving painful submission holds that toughened them up and molded them into technical wizards. Bret, born in 1957 as the eighth child, eventually climbed the mountain to become a five-time WWF champion. He also snagged the Intercontinental title twice and cemented his legacy as one of the crispest technical workers in history. The sharpshooter wasn't just a move. In his hands, it became one of the most feared finishers ever seen. Then came Owen, the baby of the family, born in 1965, who mixed technical skill with insane high-flying charisma. He was a total package, capturing 4 tag team titles and winning the 1994 King of the Ring tournament. When these two feuded on TV between 1993 and 1995, they delivered some of the most gripping drama the industry has ever witnessed. That includes their masterpiece at WrestleMania 10, where Owen shocked the world by pinning Bret clean in the middle of the mat. Despite the on-screen hatred, their real-life relationship was built on pure love and mutual respect. They might have played bitter rivals, but backstage, they were each other's biggest supporters. But tragedy struck on May 23, 1999, when Owen lost his life at just 34 years old during the Over the Edge pay-per-view. A harness malfunction caused him to fall 78 feet, a moment that shattered Bret and left a permanent scar on the wrestling world. Bret's grief was overwhelming, and his comments about that night reflect the deep anger and sorrow he felt. He was adamant that Owen would have wanted the event stopped, arguing that any family with common sense would prioritize life over the show. Bret even made a chilling comparison, asking if Vince McMahon would have kept the show running if his own son Shane had fallen from the rafters. He doubted they would have just scraped Shane off the mat to send the next match out, highlighting the double standard he felt that night. The Hart brothers remain legends, and if you want to see their legacy honored, go ahead and hit that like button to show some respect for one of the greatest families in the game. While the Harts ruled the North, another powerful dynasty was taking shape with roots deep in the Pacific. We are heading to the islands of Samoa for this next powerhouse lineage. Everyone knows The Rock and Roman Reigns are family, but the connection isn't as simple as you might think. The tie between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Roman Reigns is actually way more complex and interesting than the average fan realizes. Yes, they call each other cousins, but if you look at the family tree, there is no direct biological link between them. Their bond actually comes from a sacred blood brother pact made by their grandfathers decades ago. That pact united two separate wrestling families into the massive empire we see today. High Chief Peter Maivia, The Rock's grandfather, was a trailblazer who started in 1962 and became a huge star in various territories. On the other side, you had Reverend Amituana'i, Anoa'i, Roman's grandfather, and the patriarch of the Anoa'i clan. Back in the 1960s or 70s, these two men performed a ceremonial blood oath, binding their families together forever. This union created the Samoan Dynasty, heavily featured on TV today as the Bloodline. The Rock kicked off his journey in 1996 as the clean-cut Rocky Maivia before evolving into the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. With 8 WWF titles and iconic wars against Stone Cold Steve Austin, he did it all. He eventually transitioned to Hollywood, becoming the biggest movie star on the planet. His resume is basically untouchable at this point. Roman Reigns followed in those footsteps, debuting with The Shield in 2012 and eventually holding the Universal Championship for a historic 1,316 days. As the tribal chief, he has led the Bloodline to complete dominance over the WWE landscape. Looking back at the early days, Dwayne Johnson already knew the score when it came to his family's potential. When asked about future stars, he didn't hesitate to hype up the bloodline, pointing straight to his cousin Roman Reigns. He called it early, praising Roman's look and raw talent inside the squared circle long before the world truly caught on. That blood connection became the heartbeat of the company's biggest storylines, blowing up during the Bloodline saga when The Rock made a massive comeback in 2024 to stand with Roman against Cody and Seth at WrestleMania 40. With over 20 grapplers in the Anoa'i family tree, they have locked down their spot as arguably the most dominant dynasty to ever lace up a pair of boots. Speaking of WrestleMania 40, that event was defined by another legendary father-son bond. Please hit that like button if you want to see this legacy continue to thrive. This story is pure cinema, a dream chased down across generations. We are talking about the American Dream Dusty Rhodes and the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. The saga of Virgil Dusty Rhodes and his son remains one of the most gut-wrenching and powerful narratives in the history of the business. It is the tale of a son stepping up to finish the quest his father started but couldn't quite close out. Dusty, born in 1945 in Texas, was just a plumber's kid who flipped the script to become an absolute icon of charisma. A three-time world champ famous for the bionic elbow and those loud polka dots, he was a master of working the crowd. Dusty was the people's champion before that was even a term, connecting with the working class like nobody else. Behind the curtain, he was just as influential, acting as the mastermind who groomed the next generation of superstars down in NXT. Then you have Cody, born in North Carolina in 1985, who actually didn't have the ring as his plan A initially. But the bug bit him hard when he started renting VHS tapes from Blockbuster, watching his dad go to war with legends like Ric Flair. Seeing his father's greatness firsthand lit a fire in him. However, the real push came from heartbreak, specifically the tragic loss of his big brother Reed in 2013, which propelled him to carry the torch. When the American Dream left us in June of 2015, Cody inherited a mission to snag the one prize that always eluded his dad, the WWE Championship. He took the hard road, grinding on the independent scene to reinvent himself. He even helped build a rival empire with AEW before coming home to WWE, where he finally toppled Roman's historic run at WrestleMania 40 to become the undisputed champ. Opening up about that career-defining moment, Cody speculated on what his late father would have made of the victory. He felt that Dusty would have maintained an unshakable confidence in him even during the times Cody doubted himself. Looking around the ring, Cody realized the magnitude of the moment standing across from The Rock, a peer of his father. He saw Roman and Seth, two guys Dusty personally mentored, and realized he was the centerpiece of his father's legacy. Cody believes his dad would have simply sat back with a grin, telling everyone, "I told you he had it in him." This bond goes way beyond gold belts and trophy cases. It is about resilience, family honor, and a son keeping a promise to the man who taught him to dream big. While the Rhodes family lived the American dream, this next dynasty brought that spicy lucha libre heat to the global stage. Make some noise for Eddie and Chavo Guerrero. You cannot talk wrestling history without bowing down to the Guerreros, a Mexican-American powerhouse that influenced the game for 3 generations. Eddie and Chavo Jr. might have technically been uncle and nephew, but in their hearts they were brothers through and through. Their bond was forged by a shared heritage that defined them from day one. It all started with the Godfather Gory Guerrero, a pioneer who debuted back in 1937 and literally invented moves like the camel clutch and the gory bomb. Eddie, born in El Paso in 1967, was the baby of the family, which actually put him in the same age bracket as his nephew Chavo. With only a 3-year age gap, the dynamic was way more like siblings than an uncle-nephew situation. As kids, they were already working the crowds, wrestling during intermission at family shows. That experience built a chemistry that was absolute magic once they made it to television. Eddie became a global phenomenon, snatching up titles wherever he went. From the grit of ECW to WCW and finally WWE, his lie, cheat, and steal mantra made him one of the most beloved anti-heroes ever. Watching him hoist the WWE Championship at No Way Out in 2004 remains a tearjerker for any real fan. As Los Guerreros, the duo dominated the tag division, cracking us up with vignettes that perfectly captured their mischievous vibe. But true to the Guerrero name, the drama was always dialed up to 11. Their rivalries were just as intense as their alliances, leading to brutal showdowns like the Texas Bull Rope match in 2004. The story took a devastating turn when we lost Latino Heat way too soon in November 2005 at just 38 years old. It was Chavo who stumbled upon his uncle in that Minneapolis hotel room, a morning that would leave a permanent scar, but also ignite a fire in him to carry the Guerrero torch for the rest of his days. That family name remains untouchable, kept alive by a new wave of talent mimicking the technical wizardry and raw, authentic drama Eddie and Chavo mastered. While the Guerreros cemented their status over 3 generations, this next bloodline has matched that longevity with equal dominance. And truthfully, their youngest member might just be the absolute GOAT. We're talking about Randy and Bob Orton Jr. When it comes to wrestling royalty, the Ortons are in a league of their own, boasting a lineage that spans 3 eras with a reputation that gets more dangerous every time an Arco hits out of nowhere. The Viper didn't just get lucky, he absorbed the craft from his father, one of the slipperiest villains to ever grace the ring during the 80s boom. It all started with the grandfather Bob Orton Sr., known as the Big O, who laid the smackdown from the 50s right through the 80s, making the family name feared in territories like the NWA and Stampede. Then came his son, Cowboy Bob Orton, who became infamous for wearing a cast on his arm way past the medical healing time, utilizing it as a foreign object while backing up Roddy Piper in the main event of the very first WrestleMania. Randy entered the world in Knoxville back in 1980, and even though his folks begged him to avoid the physical trauma of the ring, he knew he was born for this. After a short run in the Marines and some old-school dungeon training with his dad and grandpa in Missouri, he signed with the big leagues and immediately proved he was a prodigy with natural gifts most guys dream of, when he snatched the World Heavyweight title at just 24 during SummerSlam 2004. It wasn't just a win, it was destiny fulfilling itself after 3 generations of grinding. Fast forward to 2026, and with 14 world titles on his resume, Randy has completely eclipsed his father's in-ring stats while constantly tipping his hat to the man who showed him the ropes. Bob Orton Jr. isn't shy about how proud he is of his son's legendary run either. He has openly admitted that while he originally hoped Randy would become a dentist to save his body, he backed him 100% once the decision was made. Bob believes his son is hands down the best talent the industry has seen in years, performing at a level nobody else can touch. He views Randy as the ultimate utility player who can be slotted into any position on the card and thrive. Whether the company needs him chasing gold or defending it, he's always in the mix. Bob notes that Randy can flawlessly switch between being the top villain or the beloved hero depending on what the show needs. Most importantly, he has the rare gift of making his opponents look like $1,000,000 while remaining a constant threat. Go ahead and smash that like button if you think the Viper is the greatest third-generation star of all time. The Orton dynasty is carved in stone, and Randy just keeps adding layers to that legacy every single year. While the Ortons ruled the Midwest, this next pair of brothers became legends on the dusty plains of Texas, proving that 2 siblings could have completely opposite styles and still dominate. Enter Terry and Dory Funk Jr. You can't tell the story of this business without the Funk brothers, 2 icons, whose unbreakable bond and wildly different approaches to the mat helped shape the industry we see today. Raised on the Double Cross Ranch in Amarillo by the legendary promoter Dory Funk Sr., these boys were fed a steady diet of grit, resilience, and a refusal to ever quit. Their dad launched his promotion in 1947, teaching his sons a legitimate, painful style of grappling where realism was king. He wasn't the type to hand out participation trophies or easy compliments. In fact, if he stayed silent after a match, that was the highest praise they could hope for. That brutal upbringing forged 2 legends who took very different paths to stardom. Dory Jr., born in '41, became a technical wizard holding the NWA World title for a mind-blowing 1,563 days starting in '69. He invented the Texas cloverleaf and popularized the spinning toe hold, defining what it meant to be a scientific wrestler. Later on, he passed that knowledge down at his conservatory in Florida, training future icons like Edge, Kurt Angle, and Lita. Then you have Terry, born in '44, who went completely off the rails in the best way possible. He also captured the NWA World title, making them the only brothers in history to both hold that prestigious strap. But Terry didn't stop there. He reinvented himself as the godfather of hardcore, pioneering the extreme style in ECW. He became the face of chaos, proving that a Funk could brawl just as well as they could wrestle. His battles with Ric Flair are the stuff of legend, and his willingness to put his body through absolute torture is exactly why they call him the hardcore legend. Sadly, we lost Terry on August 23, 2023, at 79 years old, following a tough battle with dementia. When Dory opened up about his brother, what he had to say was short but hit really hard. People always wondered if Terry was actually as unhinged in real life as his character was in the ring. Dory admitted that while Terry definitely had his wild moments, their relationship behind the scenes was mostly defined by a deep brotherly love. He acknowledged that the end was heartbreakingly tragic, but emphasized that his love for his brother never wavered. The Funk brothers completely changed the game in professional wrestling. You had Dory bringing the technical mastery and Terry bringing that hardcore innovation, building a dynasty that fans will never forget. Speaking of epic rivalries with Ric Flair, this next duo features the Nature Boy and the daughter, who is on a mission to shatter his historic record. We are talking about Ric Flair and Charlotte Flair. When you look at father-daughter teams in this business, nobody touches the drama, the prestige, and the gold-plated dominance of the Flairs. The Nature Boy and the Queen haven't just carried the family torch, they completely reinvented it. They managed to build a shared dynasty while still carving out their own massive lanes to stardom. Ric's real-life origin story is wilder than a movie script. Born Richard Morgan Flair in Memphis back in 1949. He was actually a victim of the infamous Georgia tan black market ring stolen at birth and sold to a doctor in Minnesota. That crazy start to life really set the stage for a journey filled with extreme highs and crushing lows. Tied with John Cena as a 16-time world champ, Ric is arguably the most decorated star to ever lace up a pair of boots. The sequins, the robes, the woo. Ric didn't just wrestle, he became a pop culture phenomenon. But as we all know, fame comes with a price. His private life was a roller coaster of 5 failed marriages, money issues, and the devastating loss of his son Reed in 2013 to an overdose. Charlotte, or Ashley, didn't grow up dreaming about the squared circle. She was born in 1986 and had totally different plans. She was a volleyball star with 2 state titles and was working as a personal trainer. It wasn't until losing Reed that she stepped into the ring at 26, realizing how much the business meant to her family. She did it to honor her brother's memory and to give her dad a new reason to keep fighting. The wisdom Ric passed down to her has been the blueprint for her entire run. She's mentioned that the best advice he ever gave was about knowing exactly who you are the second you walk through that curtain. He told her that if she didn't believe in her character, the fans would eat her alive because they can spot a fake a mile away. In this industry, authenticity is the only thing that really sells tickets. Now sitting as a 14-time women's world champion, Charlotte is basically the undisputed GOAT of the women's division. And she is definitely not finished yet. Her mission to beat her dad's 16-title record isn't just about the stats, it's the ultimate tribute to the man who paved the way. While the Flairs are always in the spotlight, this next connection is one that most fans completely missed. Hit that like button if you love uncovering these hidden wrestling secrets, because this one sparked the weirdest storyline involving The Undertaker. It turns out The Undertaker and Brian Lee share a family tree that most people know nothing about. That blood relation was the secret sauce behind one of the most bizarre angles the company ever produced. Mark Calaway, the man behind the Dead Man, and Brian Lee are actually first cousins. Born in Houston in 1965, Calaway was a basketball player from a big working-class family before he became an icon. When he debuted The Undertaker in 1990, he defined a generation. And we all know that legendary 21-2 streak at WrestleMania is untouchable. Brian Lee, born a year later in Florida, didn't just share DNA with his famous cousin, he looked just like him. They were both massive human beings with eerily similar builds. That resemblance paid off big time in 1994 when the WWE needed a body double. After The Undertaker died at the Royal Rumble thanks to Yokozuna, Ted DiBiase claimed he had brought him back to life with cash. In reality, he brought in Brian Lee as the imposter known to fans as the Underfaker. It all led to a surreal showdown at SummerSlam 1994, where the real Taker returned to stuff his own cousin into a casket. While critics often slammed the storyline for being cheesy, it was actually grounded in real events. Fans legitimately confused Brian Lee for his legendary cousin because the family resemblance was absolutely uncanny. Brian eventually made his WWE comeback as Chains running with the Disciples of Apocalypse during the gang warfare era of 1997 and 1998. It really proves how deep bloodlines run in this business when even a cryptic icon has relatives who can literally fill his shoes. If the Undertaker family connection threw you for a loop, you might want to sit down for this next one. Please hit that like button if you want us to keep uncovering these wrestling secrets. This next duo from Memphis is going to floor you mostly because they couldn't stand each other. We are talking about Jerry the King Lawler and the Honky Tonk Man. Memphis, Tennessee isn't just the birthplace of rock and roll and Elvis, it is ground zero for one of the bitterest family feuds in history. Believe it or not, Jerry Lawler and the Honky Tonk Man are legitimate first cousins. They share the same Memphis roots and DNA, but their relationship has been defined by real-life drama that hasn't exactly cooled off. Born in 1949, Lawler ruled the Memphis territory with an iron fist. The guy racked up over 240 championships throughout his career, including the big gold belt in the AWA. His 1982 war with Andy Kaufman and that viral slap on David Letterman was the stuff of legend. It blurred the lines of reality so well that it basically forced the mainstream world to take wrestling seriously. Then you have the Honky Tonk Man born Roy Wayne Ferris in 1953, who broke into the biz. He actually got his start because his cousin Jerry gave him a break in the local territory. But that gratitude didn't last long. Fights over money and booking decisions created a toxic atmosphere that fueled angry shoot interviews for decades. The most fascinating part is how their backstage heat often spilled right out in front of the cameras. Honky once opened up in a revealing interview about the absolute nightmare of working for family in such a cutthroat industry. He admitted that working under Lawler was a completely different experience compared to other promoters. He claimed that while Jerry Jarrett looked out for him, his own cousin didn't exactly do him any favors when it came to business. In fact, he felt like he was getting the short end of the stick whenever Lawler was calling the shots. He recalled Lawler booking him for brutal schedules like back-to-back shows that made zero logistical sense. We are talking about finishing a match and facing a grueling 500-mile drive just to make the next town. Despite all the bad blood, Honky's 454-day run with the Intercontinental title remains untouchable. And Lawler solidified his status as an icon, securing his place in history both in the ring and behind the commentary desk. While the Memphis boys spent years bickering, this next pair of English cousins united to form one of the scariest teams in history. Their partnership didn't just win belts, it changed the sport forever. Enter the British Bulldog and the Dynamite Kid. The British Bulldogs flipped the script on tag team wrestling by mixing raw power with high-speed aerial moves. The secret sauce was their bond. This was strictly a family business. Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid were first cousins, and that connection made them one of the tightest units ever seen. Hailing from a gritty mining town in England, their moms were actually sisters from the Billington clan. They grew up just a town apart. Davey was born in 1962 in the heart of that working-class community, and Dynamite-born Thomas Billington in 1958 trained alongside him at the infamous Snake Pit Gym under their uncle. They mastered the brutal catch-as-catch-can style, but Dynamite took it to a completely new level. He basically invented the modern high-flying style, influencing generations of cruiserweights that followed. His matches with Tiger Mask in the early 80s were five-star classics that redefined what humans could do inside a ring. Davey Boy provided the muscle, reportedly bench-pressing a massive 550 pounds in his prime. Together, they struck gold at WrestleMania 2 in 1986, capturing the tag team titles. They took down the Dream Team with the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, cheering them on from the corner. Their wars with the Hart Foundation are still required viewing, but the Bulldog's story has a heartbreaking ending. Years of steroid abuse and heavy bumps left Dynamite in a wheelchair by 1997. After suffering a stroke in 2013, he passed away on his 60th birthday in 2018. Davey Boy's fate was even more tragic. He died of heart failure at just 39 in 2002, worn down by the industry. It is a harsh reminder that even the most mysterious and powerful characters have family legacies that carry a very real price. Their connection ran deeper than blood, eventually merging with the Hart wrestling dynasty through marriage. Dynamite got hitched to Bret Hart's sister-in-law Michelle, and in 1984, Davey Boy joined the family for real by marrying